everybody. I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to Look Back on the Dice Tower, where we go back in time a year, 5 years, and 10 years ago, and I tell you about the reviews I did then, around this same week, and tell you if anything's changed, if I still like the games, blah, 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 blah. Here we go. A year ago. First of all, we have the Furglers. This game is horrifically bad. Has these little fuzzy dice. I guess that's cute, but the game itself is just garbage. Troll and Dragon is a push your luck game, but there's a lot of these push your luck games, and this one was just too lucky, I guess, for lack of better terms. Race for the Chinese Zodiac. Now, this is from Capstone, and normally I like pretty much everything Capstone does, but I found this one to be too convoluted for how simple the game actually is. Cheeky Butts. Yeah, it's a game about animal butts. It's for kids. It's a simple little kids game that they will enjoy. Clouds, another kids game. This is where you're just trying to match different clouds together. It's a little bit of a speed memory match, but it's not necessarily finding the same thing, but two clouds that fit together. Paranormal Detectives. I thought this was okay. I know a lot of people really like this one, where you're trying to figure out a story of something that happened. You know, someone's walking down the street and suddenly an icicle falls on them and kills them. You know that they're dead, and they're coming back and trying to tell you how they died, and they do so by using a string, by tracing something on your hand, by saying one-word clues. So I find it a little bit too esoteric for me. It's too hard in some senses, and it's a weird mix of silly party game with deduction. Kip 4. This is a decent abstract strategy game where you're rolling marbles down. The marbles don't roll enough that it matters that much, but it's okay. Mint Condition. I wanted to like this one more than I did. I think it's a fine drafting game. The idea is about collecting board games for your collection, so that's not for everybody. It's good. It could have been better, but it's a good first start for the company. Minecraft Builders and Biomes. I really like this game. I was surprised. Minecraft is not a theme that I'm a big fan of, although my daughters really, really enjoy the game. This was a good, solid game that's easy for people to jump into as you move around, try to build different areas, and fight off the different monsters. Kung Fu Panda, the board game. Solid cooperative game, and you play the different characters from the Kung Fu Panda franchise against bad guys, like a dungeon crawl, but for kids. It's a Wonderful World. What a good game. This one even might go up as time goes by. It's just a card building game where you're playing cards in front of you to get the resources from those cards, and you're kind of running an engine to get enough resources to build other cards. Very solid game. Watergate. Now, before you get too concerned, I dropped it half a point here. Not a big deal, but only because Watergate and Blitzkrieg came out in the same year, and I think Blitzkrieg, I'd rather play that. They're very similar. That doesn't mean Watergate's still not an excellent game. It really is a two-player game using the Richard Nixon versus Reporter veneer in the background. It's a little bit abstract, but it's a great back and forth. Play cards, out-bluff the other person. I do enjoy it a lot. Marco Polo 2, this is probably replacing Marco Polo for me. I think they're both fine games, and I think I like the special abilities in Marco Polo better, although you can just move them over, so it doesn't really matter. But this one's a little bit easier and a little bit more focused on the travel. But it is very similar to the first Marco Polo. And then On the Underground London/Berlin. Really enjoy this game, best with 2 or 3, about building subway routes and trying to get one passenger to go where you want to go. I found this to be fairly divisive. Some people really like it, like I do, and others aren't as fond of it, but it's one that I enjoy a lot. 5 years ago, I took a look at Hengist. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game that's just plain out awful. A 2-player game, and what's interesting is that it is universally looked at as awful. I'm not sure I've seen anyone say anything good about it. It's about connecting routes across the board, but it's so lucky. It's just a weird that this was even published. Sushi Dice, there's a lot of sushi games out there. This one is not one of the better ones, unfortunately. Bamboleo. Now, this is a cool-looking game where there's a platter that's kind of on a point, and then you place pieces on it so it doesn't fall off. It's too fragile for me. It's so easy for this thing to fall off. It falls off during setup, and it just takes one thing and the whole thing falls apart. And I don't mind dexterity games, but I don't want to have to I don't want to have to set it up every single, 30 seconds or whatever. 504. 5 years ago this came out. A grand experiment of a game. And 6 is probably the right rating for it because when it comes to being innovative and interesting, it's like a 10. But the actual games in it aren't that good. There's a few decent games in it, but there's actually some games in it that aren't that good. It has 504 different combinations of games. Cool concept. Nobody plays it today. Lucky Ducks. This is a little kids game about a really little kids game about collecting these ducks with they're moving around a conveyor belt type thing. Banana Macho, another kids game about getting bananas for your monkeys. Skyliners. Now, this is a city building game, and this one I'm dropping a bit, and that's just because in the 5 years since this came out, there are many other better city games. This one's a little abstract where you're all building a city together, and you are trying to get the different cities blocks to look a specific way for you. But like I said, there's just so many other city building games that have come out in the 5 years between. Revolt AAA, or however you say this. This is a really esoterically weird trick-taking game. It's rubber duckies versus robots. That's a weird theme. It's a weird trick-taking game. It's interesting. I'll play it occasionally, but it's a little tricky to teach people. Submerg. Man. So nowadays, when Boards and Dice comes out with a game, everyone's on board. It's amazing. This was at the very beginning of where they were at here. And it's a worker placement game. There's a lot of cool things. It's a very busy board. It's hard to see. There's a lot going on in it. It's just shy of being a game that I would recommend. And unfortunately, I don't play it because of those reasons, and there's a lot of other worker placement games out there. Inhabit the Earth. This is from Richard Brees, who did all the Key games. This is one of the ones that's not a Key game, like Cathedral and stuff. But I like this game as you pick different species and try to make them control the Earth. Has some creepy art for sure, but the game itself is fun. Hamster Roll. This one has gone up for me, and this is from the same company who made Bamboleo, actually. This one I like better. It's a big wheel. You place the different pieces on it, and the wheel starts rolling. And as it rolls and rolls, some pieces start falling off. It's a fun concept that works really well at conventions. And then Time Stories. It's a big drop, right? 10. I still like the game. That initial experience was still a 10 for me. It was so good when we first played Time Stories. I had such a fantastic time doing it. But each progressive plug-in Time Stories, to me, they mostly got worse. I mean, number 3 was the high point. Time Stories is almost the Robert Jordan of books, of board games. But, yeah, the ending was so bad it soured me on the whole experience. I might even rate Time Stories a 6 at this point. But I cannot deny the joy that I had 5 years ago when I played it. All right, let's jump back 10 years ago. We have Legitimacy. Legitimacy is a game from Minion Games. It's pretty terrible. In fact, this was, I think, maybe the first game I played for them. Didn't like it at all. Fortunately, their games got better as time went by, and they started producing some games that people enjoyed. Minion Games is no longer a company, but this was the first one 10 years ago. Ostriches, it's just a really weird little abstract game, not worth hunting down. Bridgetown Races, a little racing game. There's some interesting ideas here, but the component quality is so low, it's not one that I could recommend now. Prolix, this is a word game. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't really care for Prolix, but in 2017, it was remade as Wordsy, and they streamlined it a bit, and that was enough to make me enjoy the game. So, just instead of getting Prolix, check out Wordsy. Then we have the Truckers. This is a little game about trucks moving back, a Japanese game. It's not even okay. It's just a little bit meh, although it looks cute. Hide and Eek, great little game for little kids from Game Right. Hide and Eek. Wildlife Safari. Now this one has gone up a little bit. There's many names for this game. Quandary is one a lot of people know. I think there's a version called Thor. There's a lot of different versions of this game out there. Wildlife Safari I like a lot because it has these really cool plastic animals in it, and you're just making animals better, and then trying to collect animals of that type. But you need to use cards of that type to make them better. It's a nice little light game that has lasted many years. Then we have Eminent Domain. Wow, 10 years Eminent Domain's been out. This deck building game, along the lines of Glory to Rome, has extreme fans out there. I think it's pretty good. But there's a lot of people who love it, and there's some people who don't. I'm probably in the middle. I think it's a very good game. It's been a few years since I played it. What's My Word? This game originally came out in 1972. But I really enjoyed this back and forth. Especially, it's a two-player game. Played with my wife as you're trying to guess each other's words back and forth. So a little bit of deduction, a little bit of wordsmithing in there. And then Grimoire. Grimoire is such an interesting game where you have a little spell book and you're all playing spells from your spell book at the same time. Has a hilariously weird tie-breaking rule that if there's a tie, the designer wins the game, which has happened to me. But I really like the idea of just trying to outguess. It's like rock, paper, scissors on steroids, and is a lot of fun. And those are the games that I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Look Back on the Dice Tower.